Hello everyone, and welcome to Season 9 of Pints with Jack. It's David here, and we are kicking off Season 9 a little differently from previous seasons. So normally what we would do is we'd have all three co-hosts getting together and talking about what we're going to be doing in the coming season. But Andrew and I were invited to the C.S. Lewis Festival in Petoskey in northern Michigan. And we thought, what better way to kick off Season 9 than with a live episode in front of a studio audience. So what follows is that recording, and next week Matt will be joining us and we're going to be talking about what we're going to be looking at this season. So now we turn to the recording of the live episode of Pints with Jack at the Petoskey C.S. Lewis Festival, and it is introduced by the Pints with Jack theme song, which has been written and recorded by former guest of the show and friend of the show, Mr. Matthew Wheeler. Cheers.
Have you been looking everywhere, searching for a place where you belong? Away from the masses, among clinking glasses, where the hearth fire is on. Let the laughter welcome you in, that eagle and child din. There's room at this table to take a seat and tuck right in. Pints with Jack. Pints with Jack.
Somehow, what Lewis thought about everything was secretly present in what he said about anything. This is Pints with Jack, Season 9, Episode 1. It's all until we have faces. After hours with the Petoskey C.S. Lewis Festival. Welcome, friends, to Pints with Jack. My name is David Bates, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Reverend Andrew Lazo. My co-host, Matt Bush, was not cool enough to be here today, which is a shame because this is a special episode, and special for three reasons. First of all, this is our very first episode of Season 9 of Pints with Jack, and this is the season where we're going to be exploring the abolition of man, Lewis's deeply prophetic work. And the other reason that this episode is special is this is the first episode which we have simultaneously live streamed to all of our patron supporters and everyone on Slack. And this is our people who give us as little as $2 a month to do what we do and have other people do all of the editing, so I get to spend time with my children. So if you care about children having access to their fathers, please give us money. But let's wave to the internet, Andrew. Wave. Very good, very good. And the last reason this is a special episode is normally when we have an after-hours episode with a Lewis scholar or guest, it's usually just one of them. Sometimes two. I think on one occasion we have had three. But today's after-hour episode is with everybody who is attending the C.S. Lewis Festival in Petoskey, Michigan. So everyone, please say hello. I was tempted to say that we could have four special reasons because we heard earlier that out of Mr. and Mrs. Lazo, only one of them has a Till We Have Faces tattoo. So I was thinking that perhaps, we can have a live tattooing some point during this episode. So, Andrew, I'm not going to have you commit just yet, but just keep that in the back of your mind.
The day is young.
Unlike everyone here.
Oh, if they could have heard you, they would have.
I was actually talking about you. I was quite amazed that you had it together enough to understand that insult.
Okay, I'm going to throw the tennis balls from my walker at you as soon as I work up the strength.
Well, I think we should begin with a few introductions. So, first of all, to the people here who have never heard of us before, Pints with Jack is a podcast that began back in 2017. I met Matt Bush. You saw a picture of him earlier. I met him at a party, and we started talking about Lewis, as you do at all good parties. And we then decided that we were going to get together, read some Lewis, and drink some coffee or some beers. And then that got out of control and became a once-a-month book club with about 12 people. And then after a couple of months, it got out of control again and became a podcast. And so that's how we came to be here, and eventually Andrew managed to attach himself to us. I might tell a few stories from that later. But Andrew, for the listeners at home, would you mind explaining to them where we are right now and what we've been doing for this weekend?
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. We are in beautiful Petoskey, Michigan. We are looking out on Lake Michigan. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous part of the country. It's been a vacation spot for years. I understand the ones who come up just in the summer who buy a lot of fudge are called fudgies up here. And how many of you in the room are fudgies? Okay, well, we're in Petoskey, wonderful place, but also this is the site of literally an invitation that I have been coveting for decades. I first heard about Petoskey in, I think Sarah reminds me, it was 2005 at Wheaton College, and Michael Ward was there, Andrew Cuneo was there. Has he accepted our invitation yet to come on?
No, I've been spamming him constantly. But
okay, well, we'll have to see if we can
he's
get it.
technically agreed, but we've never managed to get him on a recording session.
All right, we may have to call in some favors, David, or something like that. So Chris Mitchell, of blessed memory, who was the director of the Marion E. Wade Center, talked about Petoskey, talked about how they had a festival, and he got an invitation, and he was on his way there, and I was just consumed with covetousness. And so I broke the 10th commandment many, many, many years over an invitation to this festival. And so I think about a year ago, I was invited to come and keynote for Till We Have Faces. And so it's just a beautiful part of the country, wonderful people, a great heritage, and great literary conversation. So it's been a fantastic day here.
Yeah, and it hasn't just been today. There have been literary conversations, a guide through Till We Have Faces over several sessions.
Oh, I'm supposed to say this stuff, right?
It's okay. This is what we normally do. It's like, Andrew, read the script I wrote for you.
Well, and then on Tuesday night, although we weren't here yet, David Krauss, Emmy-winning filmmaker, showed his documentary, The Magic Never Ends, The Life and Faith of C.S. Lewis. Then Thursday night, there was a screening of Freud's Last Session. Yesterday, Kristen did a guided prayer labyrinth, and that was marvelous. We did it in a lavender farm, and I loved the gravel. I'd never heard a crunchier labyrinth than the one we had yesterday. And then everything took a really downturn because I went on for an hour on C.S. Lewis and the Myth of Love. Don't
forget about the C.S. Lewis house band.
Oh, yes. Well, that was where the evening picked up.
Thankfully.
So yes. I went on for an hour, and then Kurt Caulfield and the C.S. Lewis house band did a brand new song on Till We Have Faces, a new song on Narnia. It was fantastic. And they played well. And then this morning, we had a little breakfast, and I did some follow-up Q&A and dove a little deeper into Till We Have Faces, got to show some slides that we left out.
Again, a low point.
Again, start on a low
come
note.
Back up again.
For those of you who don't know, we normally have every year we'll take a different book on the podcast and do a book a year. And once we do a whole month on a different Narnia book. So for the first 7 years, we did one of the Narnia books. And then we did, I think, film adaptations last year. 3 or 4 years ago, Kristen started being invited on, and not long after that, they designated her Lazo Major.
Also known as Lazo the Greater, Lazo the Superior.
Yes.
Dr. Lazo.
Yes. And then the guy who comes holding her bags, So yes, I shuffled off to Buffalo this morning, and then Kristen gave a wonderful talk on Till We Have on the Chronicles of Narnia, the story within the story, and then we just finished up an interview with Abby Santamaria, who wrote a biography of Joy Davidman, working on a biography of Madeline L'Engle, and Sarah Arthur did a wonderful job opening that up, and now here we are.
Mm-hmm. And if any listeners would like to learn more about it, go to cslewisfestival.org for more information. I actually discovered this when I was searching my podcast app looking for competition to find out who else was trying to do what we were doing. And that was when I discovered this festival and the talks from previous years. But there's plenty to listen to, but stay subscribed to us. Now, it's actually kind of funny, because normally I don't have to drive 9 hours to hear Andrew bang on about Till We Have Faces. It typically happens every week on the podcast. I can just stay at home for that. But I drove from across Wisconsin all the way along the Upper Peninsula, and I got to say, it's gorgeous. And as a Wisconsinite, I just kept thinking, why on earth did we give this up? Because for those who don't know, there was it was in the 1800s. There was dispute over it was the Toledo Strip, and Ohio got that, and then Michigan got the Upper Peninsula from Wisconsin. I was driving. You've got the lake on one side and beautiful views on the other, and the sun was setting. It was gorgeous. I just kept thinking, why on earth did we give this up? And that's a very common experience for me being British, because wherever I go in the world, I think, why? I'm in Washington, D.C. It's like, why did we give this up? This is great.
Well, and a month and a half ago, Kristen and I were graciously invited to speak at the C.S. Lewis Festival, which for the first time was in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And it was remarkable. You know, Jack Lewis watched and listened to the Titanic being built from his home. We stood at his home and we could hear the goings-on from the shipbuilders in the port. And as our Uber driver said, yes, Titanic was fine when she left Belfast. But part of what we did on a day off is we drove up the Antrim coast, which C.S. Lewis talks about. If you remember Weight of Glory, he says, they satisfy themselves with making mud pies in a slum because they cannot imagine what a holiday at sea might mean. And we drove up the Antrim coast and saw the house that Jack stayed in during a holiday at sea at Castle Rock. And so as we drove up the opposite way, we flew into Traverse City, and David kindly said, take 31 right by the lake. And there's a portion of that on the way up here called Antrim. And I wonder if maybe the Irish settled here and it reminded them of the beautiful Antrim coast. This is just a magnificent place to be.
Absolutely. And for a place this magnificent, we also need some magnificent drinks to go along with it.
Hear, hear.
And it's very special this time because we are being sponsored to drink, which is great. This is the dream. This is why I got into podcasting.
How many years? 9 years it took you to get sponsored to have a pint?
I occasionally get free books from publishers, but free beer I will definitely take. So if we could just have Peter come up and tell us what we're going to be drinking today.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me on. It's great to talk about literature and beer. I'm more comfortable talking about beer, although I occasionally read literature while I talk about beer, or when I drink beer.
Start the podcast.
Yeah. So
Tell us who you are.
Yes, my name's Peter Monti, one of the co-founders of Beard's Brewery. We started in 2012, making great craft beer, mixing it up. We have made a beer specifically themed for C.S. Lewis called Out of the Silent Planet. It's seasonal. It's ESB, which is a typical British style.
My favorite.
And I had a baby this year, and I'm behind, and I didn't get it brewed in time for the festival. So
I'll give you my mailing address.
Yeah.
ESB is my favorite.
We'll fix that.
Okay.
Come back next year. We'll have it on time. But I brought some traditional styles we could talk about. One we call our Midnight Peddler, which is an original recipe, like from when we started original. It's been with us the whole time. We used to call it Serendipity Porter. And a porter is a very traditional, 1800s England style. Now, we've mixed it up a little. Both of these beers, the other one I brought is D's Nuts Brown Ale. It's a heavy, strong brown. They both have a little bit of oatmeal. That's not typical in most porters. But it is a lighter drinking than a stout, and it was more like for the working man, so to speak. So I think you would have seen a lot of porters in pubs in Lewis's time as well, most likely.
Yeah.
Wonderful stuff. Andrew, which would you like? Okay, I'll take
the
D's
porter.
nuts.
What you want to get is a good crack.
That was beautiful.
ASMR, right?
Ooh.
There you go.
Spilled some.
For those listening, this looks beautiful.
Oh, do you mind if I pour it into the microphone?
Yeah.
Any people listening to this need to pee, please pause your podcast before resuming.
We don't want it to be an oddcast.
Excellent.
So one thing, I'm going to give this to you to drink. Now, one thing you'll notice on these glasses is that we a lot of people like at the bar will get upset. They'll be like, well, you put too much head on the beer, right? And so we put a line on the glass that says good beer has good head, because the reality of what's happening here, this is similar. It's a modern twist on like a nonic pint, which would be the typical British pint, is you're trying to open the flavors up, right? So it kind of, for those who are just listening, the glass like bulges out, and then it comes back in a little to filter those nose, what we call the nose, the aroma back in, and the head is part of that process. So it's intentional to pour a beer with nice foam on top.
Is it malty, this porter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, would you mind doing a toast to all of the organizers, supporters, and attendees of this festival?
Absolutely. Let's see, where am I? I'm right there where it says Andrew. Well, here is to all of those who have gathered together for good fellowship and a great time together. Here's to Jack, the founder of our feast, who loved to hear the roar of his friends around a pint and to be able to dive right in. And here's to friends new and old, especially thanks to Kate and to Alex and to Sarah and to David and to all of those who have made this happen at the cost of families and sleep and all the rest. Thank you so much. And here's cheers to all of you for being here.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's nice. I'm literally getting in the car once this is over. I think I'm going to swing by, pick up a six-pack.
Don't try the porter.
Oh.
Yeah.
We've podcasted together for years. Exchanged a few germs. Porter's nice. I think I like the first one better.
I like that brown ale as well. Yeah.
Dang.
You're not
Thank
the
you
only
very
one
much,
stopping
Peter.
by on the way.
Cheers.
Thank you, Peter.
So the origin of today's episode title comes from something which Diggory, the Lord Diggory, says at the end of the last battle. It's all in Plato, all in Plato. Bless me, what do they teach them in these schools? And whereas Diggory thought it was all in Plato, the point of this episode is to suggest it's all in Till We Have Faces.
As it is, yes, of course.
Because this weekend at the Petoskey Festival, we've been exploring the faces of C.S. Lewis, which, needless to say, means that Andrew wanted to speak about a certain book at great length, which some people think is his best book.
Including
and
the
these-
author
these-
himself,
these
the
are-
founder of our festival.
Yes, and these are good people, scholarly people, sometimes wrong people.
What do you mean by wrong?
I will define and describe at great length later, but not now. That's a rant for another time.
How did all of this argument ever begin, David?
Well, it started because I heard you on All About Jack, which is the podcast by William O'Flaherty.
To whom cheers.
Cheers. Cheers to William. Technically brought us together. I was listening to an episode on William's podcast, and he had on this guest. He was American, bit of a loudmouth. And he kept making very bold claims like, oh, this is Lewis's best book. He had cracked Till We Have Faces. He could explain it all. And he also claimed that there were traces of Till We Have Faces in every book that Lewis ever published. And since we just finishing up season 2, when we'd gone through The Great Divorce, and we were about to start season 3 to do Till We Have Faces, I thought, let's invite this loudmouth onto the show and see what he's got. And we did that, and he's never left since.
There's no accounting for taste amongst my host. I met David at the C.S. Lewis Festival in Pomona College. And I saw that sticker that has Jack with the beer on it back at the table. I saw that on his, or no, it was
Eagle and
the
Child.
old Eagle and Child flag, and I'm like, this is a guy who knows his stuff. And so he was there when I did my first really kind of off-script Q&A, and he said, hey, we're going to do a season Until We Have Faces. Would you like to come on and talk about it? Little did he know that I would never shut up about it. But that's how it all began all those years ago.
Yeah, and while Andrew has never managed to convince me that it's Lewis's best book, the idea that Till We Have Faces is everywhere, on that I'm sold. Because like the past season we did...
Got him.
Well, nearly, not quite. I think you've appreciated The Great Divorce with increased fervor over the last few years.
It's a wonderful book. But in the last few years, although David and Matt both argue that Great Divorce is Lewis's best, I say define and describe best, and they're never able to do so to my satisfaction. But since I've come on in the last few years, regularly I'll get this text, and David will be listening or reading something by Lewis and says, and this is just like Till We Have Faces. I got 2 texts from him while he was driving here about comparisons between Till We Have Faces and another work, and so I think I have created a happy monster.
Well, it is true. I've definitely been quoting it more often. And this past season when we've done Perelandra, if you think about it, Perelandra is the story of Eden that's just retold on Venus. And Till We Have Faces is quite literally a myth retold. And in Perelandra, the Green Lady, she has to trust Meleldil. And in Till We Have Faces, Psyche has to trust the god of the mountain. And Orwell is also called to trust, even though she doesn't do it quite so well. In Perelandra, the unman, he's constantly trying to twist love and turn it into pride and vanity, self-exaltation. And Till We Have Faces is just that turned on its head. It's all about trying to untwist all of Orwell's loves back to something pure. And in Perelandra, Ransom, he's scarred, but he's also glorified, and the Lord and Lady, they ascend. And how does Till We Have Faces end? But, with a meeting with divinity and royalty, and Orwell receiving her face and being transformed. So my point is, I saw very clearly that, yes, it is everywhere. And even in Kristen's talk.
In fact, Perelandra is what planet?
Venus.
Venus. And what is her Greek name? Aphrodite. And what is her Glomish name?
Ungit.
Ungit. And Trom says of his daughter, or Trom holds his daughter's face up to the mirror, and she wails, and she says, I am Ungit too. And because Lewis writes from the first person point of view, we too are love. Ungit, Perelandra, Venus. It's all there.
It's all there. And, Kristen was giving her talk earlier about Narnia, and Till We Have Faces is everywhere there. In The Magician's Nephew, Diggory is called to a test of obedience, that theme coming up again. In Prince Caspian, I know Andrew's going to want to say something about this because he always does. Aslan is initially invisible, like the palace. Aslan is invisible, but it's Lucy and her eyes of faith that are able to see him. Do your thing.
So,
first of all, we have to do the definition of Lucy's name. What does it come from the Latin?
I used to believe that Lucy sees everything because of her faith. And when I say Lucy sees everything, what I encourage you to do the next time you read any Narnia that has Lucy in it, pay attention to how often she notices everything. She sees the robin first. She sees the way into the wardrobe. She knows where everything is on the Dawn Treader because she has paid attention. Lucy always sees, and I used to think, that's because she believes, but since my work on Till We Have Faces, I believe that it's another reason, and Suzanne and I were just talking about experiment and criticism, but her name, Lucy, any of you of Scandinavian origin maybe celebrate St. Lucia's Day, right? And doesn't she wear a crown with lights upon her head? Any of you Latinists will know that Lucy, Lux Lucas, means light, right? And any of you Roman Catholics will know that when you have trouble with your eyes, you pray to Saint Lucy, the patron saint of the blind. She's always portrayed in medieval iconography with eyeballs in her hands. Lucy sees. In fact, I have seen a page from Lewis's atlas. He had an atlas as a young boy, and I've seen the page from Italy. Walter Hooper had it framed on his wall, and Lewis underlined the name of a little town in Italy. And in this town, there was not Saint Lucy, but a Blessed Lucy. And the town is called Narni. The Blessed Lucy of Narnia. And Lewis has underlined that name, Narnia. And so I began to look at what is happening. And of course, those of you who have been listening, especially last night, Lewis is not about joy, he's about
love.
Love. And love is where we go out of ourselves towards the other. And Lewis, in Experiment and Criticism, says, I must see with other eyes. My own eyes are not enough for me. There's an essential love and humility that take place when we allow an author to take over our imaginations, right? And so I must see with other eyes, and I realize that Lucy sees because she loves. She's worried about Tumnus. She notices that Edmund is gone. She lets Tumnus off the hook. Well, you didn't mean to, or you wouldn't have, right? She sees because she loves, and then there's this. What is her gift from Father Christmas? She gets a dagger, and we never hear about it again. But she also gets a cordial. And what is in the cordial? A cordial. They call it a cordial, the bottle, because what it contains is a cordial, which is an alcoholic drink that revives the heart. So the drink is called a cordial, and the bottle is called a cordial, and the word is from corde, heart. Lucy's gift is the heart. And because of this heart, she can heal. Now watch this. We've done enough Latin, let's do a little French. You remember the voyage of the Dawn Treader, and they go into the darkness, and Lucy crawls up to the mizzenmast, and the albatross, who starts as a cross, then is an albatross, a symbol of Christ, comes and whispers in her ear, and it's Aslan's voice, and what does he say to her? Courage,
dear heart.
Dear heart. Courage, the French word, comes from the Latin word corde. And Lewis says that courage is not just one of the virtues, it's all of the virtues at their testing point. Courage is to have the heart to think that a virtue might be more important than me, to go out of myself towards another. Or as Lewis says in Mere Christianity, out of ourselves into Christ we must go. And Aslan whispers in Lucy's ear to have heart, to be courageous, dear heart, and she then sees the light. Lucy sees because she loves, right? And once you know that seeing is connected to love, Orwell's own blindness is because the opposite of love, remember what I said last night, is pride, self. Love will see anyone else. Pride will only see one's self. And David pointed out on the podcast that is when Orwell takes the physical position of humility, when she kneels, driven, as Kristen pointed out today, kneels driven by her thirst, kneels at the river, she looks up and she sees the palace. This is where he's quoting Letters to Malcolm, chiefly on prayer, which is not published until 1964. The body there, in that book, he says, the body also needs to pray. When Orwell, consumed by pride, just when her body assumes a physical position of humility, when she kneels, the God of love grants her vision, and she sees the palace. I think it's simply because she is kneeling and because the God of love thinks maybe I can get to her now when I couldn't get to her before. And he grants her vision, and it's a vision that she denies for the rest of her life and never tells the fox about, never tells Arnhem. Can you imagine the revolution in Glomian religion if she came to Arnhem and said, I saw the God of the mountain? And because she has refused this joy, she cannot see the palace, but it's there. And isn't that like all of us? And so when you see that vision is a gift to the selfless or to the loving, and that Lewis is really really committed to vision, so much depends upon the seeing eye, right? Is his essay about the Russians not seeing God in space. Of course they didn't. They didn't have a seeing eye. Is it Eustace? No, it's Digger. He says, a star is just a big ball of gas, flaming gas. Eustace, yeah.
Even in your world, my son, that is what a star is made of, not what it is.
Not what it is, right? And so much depends, what you see and hear depends on where you stand and on what sort of person you are. What sort of person will take us back to mere Christianity and talking about the virtues. And as you make yourself a more loving person, God will give you more vision. And so all of this vision stuff that I learned, all of a sudden I understood why Lewis is so committed to seeing. And so that's why the field theory, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I had an outline, and we've already sort of jumped towards where we were going.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about vision, you have to have that quotation from the magician's nephew. If you're talking about that, then you have to talk about the vision of the palace. If you're talking about that, then you've got to talk about Out of the Silent Planet, when Ransom first comes to Mars, and he doesn't even know what he's looking at. Mm-hmm. The point is, it's everywhere. And earlier this weekend, Andrew put forward his unified field theory of Lewis, which is mythos and logos, caritas and claritas, so story, word, charity, and love. And for those at home, he made a case, again, for Till We Have Faces being the best book, but pointing it out as a modernist novel, the best autobiography that Jack ever wrote, his clearest proclamation of the good news, and his most holistic book. And so in the time that we've got left, it's that last point that we're really going to hone in on about it being a holistic book and trying to draw some of these connections because they are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I think it can really affect our reading of literature in general, but in particular Lewis. Andrew, how would you like to begin on this?
So I just want to clarify the field theory.
Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah,
Lewis uses word, logos, and story, mythos. Mythos means story. That's all it means in Greek, right? He uses language and story in order to help us to see things clearly. In fact, as we were preparing just an hour ago, David said, okay, where is Till We Have Faces in studies in words?
To be fair, if Till We Have Faces is his officially his best book, Studies in Words is probably his most boring. Is that fair?
It's yes, it's the most difficult perhaps to get through, although there's some nuggets there. Lewis studied I think 30 words and wrote for pages and pages about them. But Orwell is committed to language. Only words led out to battle with other words. She also says, the gods probed me with my own pen. She also says, the writing was the answer, right? And so language is important to her. And then what's her nickname that the Fox and Psyche call her? They call her Maya. And Maya in Greek myth, as I'm sure you all know, is the mother of Hermes. Hermes, the messenger god, is the inventor of language. Orwell is the mother of language. And she's using her language to try to tell her story about the gods. So what you see is that Lewis is committed to using story, catching the reader unawares through fiction and symbol, language, studies in word, Oxford History of English Literature. He's using language in order to help us see more clearly. And the thing that we most need to see clearly is love. So story and language help get us to clarify. He uses story and language to help clarify things, especially love. So mythos et logos, claritas, caritas. Where else?
Oh my goodness, everywhere. I mean, just on the issue of vision alone, think back to the last battle in the dwarves. The dwarves are for the dwarves.
Yes.
Because of their attitude, that line from The Magician's Nephew, what you see depends on what sort of person you are and where you're standing, or kneeling by the river with your veil off, drinking water, looking at a palace. It changes what you can see. And the dwarves turn in on themselves.
Yes.
St. Augustine, Luth, they spoke about incurvatus in se, about a soul turned in on itself. And one of the consequences
They're
of that,
sitting in a circle looking at each other. They're taken into heaven, but they cannot see it. They're offered heavenly food, and they smell dung-covered hay. And they're turning in on each other, and they say the dwarves are for the dwarves. They would not be taken in, right? They refuse vision, and all they can see is the dung of their own imagination.
Mm-hmm. And if people have read The Pilgrim's Regress, it's in there as well. John can't see the landlord's country until his vision is purified. Mm-hmm. And we mentioned just before the scene in Prince Caspian where Lucy can see, but the others can't. And what do they spend all their time doing during that traveling? bickering and fighting and being grumpy.
Right.
And as a consequence, their eyes are blinded.
And who does Aslan appear to first after Lucy in in Prince Caspian?
I know. Yeah.
Edmund. And Edmund doesn't see him, but he believes in Lucy, and he begins to love her who loved him, even though he betrayed her and did the nastiest thing he could think of. And because of Edmund's move towards believing, right, he can see. And then Peter, and then Susan. And she says, the sad thing is I saw him, or at least I could have if I had let myself.
Orwell.
He said it, I didn't. It's what Orwell would, if she would allow herself to see, right? And isn't that like anybody that you see in your own mirror, right? Bono says, no one is blinder than he who will not see, right? Do we often blind ourselves to the image of God in us as the beloved of God, right? Isaiah says that he's engraved us in the palms of his hands. Zephaniah says he exults over us with singing. But is that what you see in your mirror every day? I have to be honest, it's not what I see in my mirror. But God sees us completely forgiven, completely redeemed, and beautiful as his creation. And even Orwell, right? Who can feel ugly when the heart meets delight? And I was talking with somebody earlier at the book table about Orwell's ugliness, and yes, it's a physical ugliness, but Charles Williams was an ugly man, simian-like, Lewis said. He looked like an ape, but with the most beautiful of spirits, right? And so his looks don't even matter much. It's how you see. It's all until we have faces.
Maybe we should say something about love, considering that is one of the key elements of your field theory. And I would agree, it's the key to understanding Till We Have Faces. We've mentioned earlier about its relationship with the four loves, but this is the narrative version. And if people haven't come across it, you'll often find Lewis will pair a narrative with a more didactic work. So this season we're going to be doing The Abolition of Man. The following season we're going to do that again in narrative form in That Hideous Strength.
Yes. Well, and what's the problem that Lewis is trying to solve in Abolition of Man? What does he call the men?
Men without
chests, right? They don't have the heart, right? They've got head and they've got gut, but they have no sensitivity, they have no feeling. And so as I began understanding that the four loves were Until We Have Faces, and of course the four loves are in the four loves, I asked myself, how far back does it go? May of 1940, Lewis writes a letter to Warney where he talks about the four Greek concepts of love. He's also been trying to write Till We Have Faces in various forms all of his life. And then the individual loves go even further back. So almost as long as Lewis is an adult, he's writing about philia. He's writing about story. He's writing about the loves. He's grappling with agape or agape. And so it becomes, and that really helped me, because if Lewis is about joy and absence and longing, why does he move so many of us so deeply? He moves us in the heart. You all got in a car and paid money to sit in this room, right? Because Lewis does this thing inside of our hearts. And once I understood that joy pointed towards love and that what Lewis is really all about is about love, then chunk! All of a sudden, Lewis kind of clicked into place. And he's so compelling because what he's most concerned with is the most important thing, which is love, right? So, yeah.
And particularly how the natural loves,
right.
He defines them as storge, so affection, eros, romantic love, and philia, friendship. How these natural loves can go bad if left unchecked and uninfused with agape, without charity.
He quotes Denis de Rougemont. He says, love ceases to be a demon when he ceases to be a god. And he corrects Chesterton, I think it's Chesterton, he corrects somebody who says, when the real God comes, the half-gods go. But Lewis says, no, when the real gods come, the half-gods can take their proper place. A love becomes tyrannical, right? Like Pam with the mother's love. Any of the natural loves will go off the rails unless they are tempered by unconditional love, God's love. And it's also, not only does God's love need to be in the primary place, when our natural loves go wrong, they go wrong because they are taking that throne. But then also, when our natural loves fail us, divine love comes and strengthens, right? Sometimes you love your spouse not because you're feeling romantic towards them, but because you know it's your duty, and you ask for help to do that. That happens more on one side of our relationship than on the other. She puts up with me much more than I deserve.
The same is true for friendship. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Yes, it is. But how often do our friends fail us, but our commitment to that friendship, even when they have hurt us, allow us to forgive, right? And to accept. Storge goes wrong when it is not strengthened by agape. One of the things, and I want to be careful here, but I also want to be pastoral, one of the great problems in this last couple of weeks in our country is people have given themselves permission not to love their enemies. We don't have permission not to love our enemies. We are commanded dominically to love our neighbors as ourselves. And the Good Samaritan tells us that our neighbors are our enemies. And something happens and somebody says something about some event that just happened, and that allows us to just now roll up our sleeves and blast them. There's never a moment when it's okay to roll up our sleeves and blast them. We can stand against evil, but we cannot allow ourselves off the hook of loving others. But here's the great news from Andrew Peterson, who does Behold the Lamb of God and Is He Worthy? Andrew Peterson's got this marvelous song. He says, be kind to yourself. You know why? Because you've got to learn to love your enemies too. We are our own greatest enemy. And if we learn to be kind to ourselves, it's a good way to start to learn to love somebody who maybe does something untoward towards ourselves, and that's what we do to ourselves all the time. We must love and pray for our enemies. That doesn't mean not to stand against unrighteousness. Do that with all your strength. But do so without ever breaking the second commandment to love our neighbors as ourselves. And Orwell, who hates herself, finally learns that she is beloved. And where a better book would begin, his must end. We're a better podcast.
Yeah, and it's just as you're talking there, I was thinking back to a different Lewis book, Mere Christianity, because the first time I read that, it was Lewis's section on love, I think, that stood out to me the greatest, when he speaks of what we are called to do. We are called to think the best of people, to wish that they weren't so bad, to try and help them be their best version of themselves. And he says, because there's one person that we always do that for, ourselves, which is where all of this begins. I think until we have faces, in Orwell you see her misunderstanding of love. We spoke about how natural loves become corrupted unless they're infused with something bigger and greater. But with Orwell, love is always a zero-sum game. You know, when she goes to the pillar room, not the pillar room, when she goes to the five-sided room to comfort Psyche, all she can do is be angry whenever Psyche speaks with any tenderness or affection for the fox, Redeval.
Anyone but
Orwell. And this idea of reordering loves is very Augustinian, and it's very Lewisian, because, again, it's everywhere in that hideous strength. You know, Jane Studdock, she has to learn how to love her husband again. Her husband has to learn how to love her again, and is guided in that way by Ransom. And, of course, we can't talk about loving rightly without talking about Lewis's best book, The Great Divorce.
David's favorite book, you meant. I heard that unclearly.
Well,
yes.
And Andrew sort of proved my point last night, because what does he quote? He quotes Pam. The great. I tell people, read the vignette about Pam loving her son, being willing to drag him down into hell if it just means that she gets to have him.
Yes.
There's also a wife who wants to do things to her husband, just boss him around. She terrorized him in life. She now wants to do that in death. So Lewis is always exploring all of his ideas again and again, just in different forms.
And Great Divorce, I think, is a perfect example because the opposite of love is self. And everybody except for the red lizard dude says yes to themselves and no to heaven. And one by one, they say, oh, I can't stand for this. I'll go back to the gray town. One by one, they choose self over God, right? And like the woman who, and he said, George MacDonald said, oh, I've seen such sparks, grow into some flames. To love anything beside yourself is a step away from annihilation, is a step away from darkness, right? And so he says a young man who stops going to church because he loves to paint and he spends his days painting instead of going to church is perhaps a step closer to the Spirit of Christ. Because in his painting, he could be working out the image, the creative image of God in himself, and he's thinking about portraying something outside of himself. I mean, it can be a step towards a passion that God gave him. Giving our hearts to anything else is at least a good step. He says terribly, and it's a terrible, terrible analogy. I should stop using it. He said, a cold-hearted prig might be farther from the Spirit of Christ than a prostitute. But of course, it is better to be neither. Right? But a cold-hearted prig is only concerned with himself and his bank balance and me. And the opposite of me is you. Or as Martin Buber would say, the opposite of I is thou. You, O Lord. And any other you, hopefully, will lead us to the ultimate you, which is the God who has been loving us long before we knew him.
Needless to say, I was thinking about The Great Divorce when you were talking.
Yeah. He captures that so well in The Great Divorce.
And even the little scene with the one woman that is so focused on herself that unicorns are sent to scare her.
Yeah.
Just if the only thing that was going to achieve was to get her to take her eyes off herself and look out into the world, that was at least a step forward.
The rebuke of Jesus to the Pharisees, brood of vipers, is trying to help them get over themselves a little bit and look past themselves, right? Even our Lord's corrections and rebukes, even his discipline, even his trials. St. Paul says that God has graciously granted, meaning given you as a charism or a gift, not only that we believe in him, but also that we suffer for him, because suffering takes us out of ourselves and throws us onto powers that are greater than us. I don't want suffering, but I want the results of it. When I first became an Episcopalian, I'm an Episcopathabapticostitarian. I've been everything, and I was raised nothing. And when I finally made my way to the Episcopal Church, Lewis invited me. I mean, it was like, okay, he was Anglican, I'm going to give this a try. And I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know when to kneel, when to cross, which book to use, what to do. The sermons are 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm like, that's not a sermon. That's a Baptist preacher clearing his throat before the first anecdote. Going on here. And I love the fact that I didn't know what was going on because it humbled me. And if ever I needed something to happen in church, instead I got taken out of myself, right? And it humbled me, and I didn't know what was going on, and I wasn't in charge during church. Boy, that's a good thing. And now as one of the guys who leads doing that, boy, that needs to be a good thing there too. Yeah, it's all in Great Divorce, isn't it?
It's all in The Great Divorce. Next year we will be doing... Two other topics I wanted to briefly touch on, because time is marching on.
You said briefly, I see. I heard.
Well, I'm going to be brief. I'll keep you under control. Was the other big themes in Till We Have Faces are divine hiddenness,
yes,
and God's silence. And Andrew has two first edition Grief Observed up on your table. Are they first editions?
My first edition clerk has already sold. I've got second editions, though.
Okay, well, there's second editions. You can still get in there.
They're quite lovely. Yes.
But in A Grief Observed, this is the question that Lewis asks in the light of his wife's death. It's like, where is God? He says, go to him when your need is desperate, when all help is vain. And what do you find? a door slammed in your face. And one of the points that you made last night was about this, about Lewis being autobiographical.
Yes.
And you find this very idea explored until we have faces. Because Orwell's repeated complaints, the fact that the gods stay quiet. You know, she says, I prayed and absolutely nothing happened. Or did it?
At the end of Grief Observed, Lewis records, and then Joy said, to the priest, but not to me, I have made my peace with God. And then the last line, and then she smiled, but not at me. Poi s'eterno alla eterna fontana. And then she turned to the eternal fountain, quoting Dante. Her last move was to smile at God. Now she did say to Jack, oh, you have made me very happy. But Jack could not begrudge her for loving the great lover of her soul as she went into his arms. It hurt him, but the pains you give me, as I said last night, as Jack said of Joy, are more precious than all other gains. Yes.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on is the subtitle of Till We Have Faces, because it says it's a myth retold. And in your field theory, this idea of myth, the retelling, the sneaking past watchful dragons, it's everywhere. You've quoted an experiment in criticism, I think at least 4 times this weekend in my presence.
It's wonderful.
When Lewis says, I must see with other eyes. My own eyes are not enough for me to be able to look through another vision.
Yes.
And you know, I would argue that's largely what he's doing in the Chronicles of Narnia. We are entering into another world, as Aslan himself says, so that by knowing him better there, we may know him better here.
Yes.
We can see him more clearly.
Indirect theology by catching the reader unawares through fiction and symbol. Not a frontal attack, but attack on our own selfishness as well. And Lewis in Experiment and Criticism says, gladly would I read not only the worlds that men have reported, I would read their invented worlds. Anything that will get me out of myself is a good first step towards things, right? And Narnia is a great way to kind of to do that, this invitation into this story that carries us into another world because we were made for another world. If I find in myself a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, I can only assume that I was made for another world. That's why we come here. It's because it scratches this itch in us that tells us that we were made for another world. And I don't know about you, but when I gather with Lewis friends at conferences, especially in beautiful places, it's the closest thing I know to heaven. We get to talk about the real things of the soul. And Lewis unlaces us to talk about the deep things. And when we do it in a beautiful place, oh my goodness. I think that when we get to heaven, we'll find some corners and go, doesn't that remind you of Petoskey? Yes. At the end of the last battle, the vision that Lewis has for heaven is a vision I have for it as well. It's England and Narnia, all together in one.
I'm not going to dispute that.
I would probably say Northern Ireland too, but that's part of England.
No.
Yeah.
Until they ask for it back again.
Sore subject.
To sort of put a bow on this, I'm going to ask you, so what? It's his most cohesive book. What Lewis says about one thing, one place, he says about it everywhere else. How does that change our understanding of Till We Have Faces, the rest of his works, and the rest of literature?
I like that you said to put a bow on it, because the word in Spanish for bow is lazo. What you find, and I had a lovely conversation with Suzanne, I'm so grateful to her. What you find in Till We Have Faces is all of the concentrated richness that are in Lewis. And by saying it's in all of his other books, he's doing all of these things. I'm not saying only read this. I'm saying that in some ways you get more bang for your buck, and it's also the most creative thing. It's the only book, the only fiction that he wrote when he had the freedom of not having to take tutorial students every week. His job at Cambridge, that he won in 54 and started in 55, tripled his salary, doubled his prestige, and cut his workload in half. And he dried up, and Joy Davidman helped kick an idea into life, and it was this long idea of writing about Cupid and Psyche. And it's far and away his best book, his last fiction, his book that he wrote with the woman that he was falling in love with. And it contains everything else, including a clear analogy or allegory, if you will, of God's love for us, even when we are at our most ugly and unlovable. And so what I find is concentrated in Lewis, the ideas that compel me most in Lewis. And I love all of his stuff. People say, what's your favorite Lewis? And I'll say, the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and of course, Till We Have Faces, and the Collected Letters, Volume 3, or whatever I'm reading right now is my favorite Lewis. But Till We Have Faces is so deliberately crafted and does this really beautiful thing in one complete unit with no loose ends. Everything means something and builds towards this silence in which we write but cannot say the love of God for us. And so we print it on our faces. And that, in some ways, is why I just keep coming back to that book, because it tells me about the most important things in this world: love, beauty, difficulty, and God. And that's why I think we keep going back to that book. It's all there.
I think for myself, the worst thing I think that ever happened in literature was a movement that Lewis fought against. But it's basically the idea that you basically take the book, your feelings, you don't need anything else, rather than seeing literature as a whole as a tapestry, where with books talking to each other over time, through different languages, as each author responds to the other. And seeing this web, even within Lewis, and seeing his web reach out further. Nobody has added more books to my bookshelf than this Irish writer. Because I'm reading one book and he's quoting somebody. It's like, oh, that sounds interesting. It's like, go online, try and hide the payment from my wife. But seeing the web expand as a whole, and what that does to my reading when I'm reading Book A in light of Book B. And if I can steal Aslan's words, when I read Pam in The Great Divorce, seeing that effect there helps me also know it better when I switch to Till We Have Faces, and vice versa, that our reading is mutually enriching as we traverse this web and see Lewis exploring these ideas through time as his understanding changes, but also through different form, through different genre. And more often than not, I'm caught unaware. By story and symbol.
And in trying to get my arms around, having read so much Lewis and knowing where everything is, trying to kind of get my arms all the way around that guy is a mad wish. But it wasn't until I read Till We Have Faces that I found this kind of cohesive vision of him. And one of the things that struck me the most is when I first taught it in 2006 at the Summer Institute. We were making these discoveries together, and then I had Tom Howard and Malcolm Geit and Joseph Pierce. I mean, I had all of these Lewis scholars over breakfast to bounce my ideas about Till We Have Faces off of. And, they were like, yeah. And so it was happening. But as we're getting into the class, I had a woman who's an ER nurse. And halfway through the class, every day, she'd jump up and run weeping from the room because this book was so touching to that angry, bitter, difficult part of ourselves, and a way that redemption touches that angry, bitter part of ourselves. And at the end of the class, a guy came up to me and he said, my wife and I are going away next weekend for our 20th anniversary, and we can't wait to read this book about love together. And the next guy comes up to me and he said, my best friend's son has been wrongfully imprisoned for 17 years, and I'm going to read this book with them. It meets us where we are, in our pains, in our joys, in our loves, in ourselves and how we struggle. and in the mirrors that we look into. And I'll remind you what Orwell says. When her father puts her head up to the mirror and says, "Who are you, child? What do you see?" And she says, and even though she hates it and doesn't understand it, she says, "I am love." We are love. We all with unveiled faces are reflecting the glory of the one who loved us first. And that's what I see in Lewis. That's what I see here. And that's part of why this book means so much, is because it crystallizes Lewis holding up the mirror to ourselves of the love of God. There's nothing more important in the whole world.
Well, Andrew, where can people go to find out more about the C.S. Lewis Festival?
Well, first of all, I suggest you come to the C.S. Lewis Festival. It's at cslewisfestival.org. One of the best organizations Kristen and I have been to. We've been invited to many places, but they did a fantastic job of welcoming us, of promoting it, and then of gathering scholars. The list of scholars who've been invited here: Michael Ward, Walter Hooper, Jerry Root, Sarah Arthur, Diana Glyer, Anne Voskamp, Philip Yancey. The list goes on and on. All of my heroes have been here and continue to go here. And now, David Bates.
Thank you. Thank you.
The founder of Pints with Jack. And so cslewisfestival.org is the place to go. Where am I?
Well, I hear the call for final drinks.
Ah. I'm finding where my green is. There it is. Where is it? Up. Sorry. Ah, yes.
This normally
I
gets
hear the
cut
call
out
for
in editing.
So-
This is the danger of doing it live.
So thanks to our hosts here in Petoskey, to Beard's Brewing, to Kate Rollis, the Selfless, to Alex Daly and Sarah Arthur, Suzanne Shumway, and David Krause, to our fans who have found their way here. Met so many
Kaylee,
of you.
Kathy, well done for
Yes.
representing.
Here. To our stenographer, Julia, to our sound engineers, Taylor and Sarah, and who else?
All of our top-tier Patreon supporters, people that give us $2 or more each month to talk and drink beer. Ryan, Dan, Jody, Dave, Brian, Meg, Rebecca, Sarah, Mark, Kevin, Paul, Bud, James, Robert, Mark, Matt, Erica, Joelle, Amanda, Thomas, Shane, Becca, Paul, Gary, Stephen, John, James, Kate, Peter, David, Rowdy, and Angela.
And you also mentioned Kaylee and Kathy, who are here and Patreon supporters. So
absolutely.
Cheers to you. Yes.
And of course, to all of you for listening, and to everyone here in Petoskey. We pray for you every time we release an episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and get ready for the rest of Season 9, when we're going to be exploring the abolition of man. And join us next time.
It's your part now, when we'll continue going further up.
And further in.
Cheers!
Thank you.
Wow. Holy cow.
You too. What a riot. Oh my goodness. Thanks to all of you for holding as still and quiet as possible. I feel like I've been on a road trip in heavy traffic, just like. And so I don't know how you do, like you get a massage after this or
man.
whatever, but you all were wonderful.
Matt usually mellows us out.
Yeah, I'm just like, woo, okay. But you did it. Well done.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm so excited. It'll be fun to hear that. You'll let us know.